Welcome back to Ethical Point. Today we're tearing into a seriously fascinating explainer. We are bridging ancient Indian philosophy with the very real, very modern public service dilemmas you're going to face, especially if you're gearing up for the UPSC Civil Services main examination, specifically General Studies Paper 4. It's so easy to think of ethics and statecraft as, purely modern inventions. But the truth? The ultimate playbook was actually written millennia ago. Let's get right into it. Look at this quote from Kautilya. Your neighbor is your natural enemy, and the neighbor's neighbor is your friend. I mean, wow. Talk about a stark, almost shockingly realist perspective, right? Kautilya absolutely did not sugarcoat geopolitics. He viewed the world through this intense lens of pragmatic survival. He knew that just by being close to someone, proximity breeds friction, whether that's over resources, borders, or just pure influence. But, okay, play the skeptic for a second. You might be sitting there asking yourself, does a 2,000-year-old theory really still apply to modern geopolitics and administration? We have the UN now, international law, heavily globalized trade. Isn't this ancient, somewhat cynical view kind of outdated for an aspiring civil servant today? Well, I'm here to prove to you that Kautilya's framework isn't just relevant. It is literally the foundation of modern statecraft. Once you grasp his core logic, you're going to see it operating in today's headlines. So, here is our mental map for this explainer. First, ancient wisdom, modern statecraft. 2. Decoding the Rajamandala Theory. 3. Identifying the 4 threats. 4. 4 pillars of security. 5. Ancient methods, modern dime. And finally, 6. Your UPSC mains answer strategy. Section 1. Ancient wisdom, modern statecraft. Kautilya's vision. For a little context, Kautilya, who you might also know as Chanakya or Vishnugupta, was this incredibly influential philosopher and the chief advisor to the Mauryan king. He was the absolute brains behind the throne. He compiled all his wisdom into his magnum opus, the Arthashastra. And guys, this wasn't just some abstract book of philosophy. It was a highly practical, nuts-and-bolts treatise on statecraft, economic prosperity, and military strategy. Basically, a comprehensive operating manual for running a nation. His most revolutionary idea? Making national security the absolute first responsibility of a ruler. This purely pragmatic approach is what helped Chandragupta Maurya transform a regional kingdom into a massive pan-Indian empire. Section 2. Decoding the Rajamandala Theory. The Circle of Kings. Okay, let's decode Kautilya's strategy for figuring out exactly who to trust and who to keep an eye on. Rajamandala is a massive keyword you need in your arsenal for GS Paper 4. So let's break it down into layman's terms. Mandala literally means circle. Rajamandala is a geopolitical theory where friends and enemies of a nation exist in concentric circles. Think of it like dropping a pebble in a pond. You, your nation, are the pebble right at the very center. And the ripples radiating outward, those represent your relationships with other states. So, how do nations actually fall into these different ripples? Kautilya classified them into 4 crystal-clear diplomatic categories. First, you have friends, or Mitra. Second, enemies, or Ari. Then you have your mediators, Majjhima. And finally, neutral nations, Udasina. It sounds super calculated, right? Because it is. Kautilya explicitly advised kings to build mutual interest with those mediators and neutral nations, because, let's be real, he frankly noted that there is some level of self-interest behind absolutely every friendship. Section 3. Identifying the 4 threats. Internal and external vigilance. Now, diplomacy is just one side of the coin. Kautilya knew that a sovereign identity is constantly under pressure from all sides. He warned that a leader has to keep a massive vigil on all fronts, not just looking outward and invading armies. He categorized these into 4 urgent threats: internal threats, externally aided internal threats, and internally aided external threats. This is where it gets crazy relevant. In Kautilya's era, an internal threat might be a local rebellion, right? But when you map this to the modern era, it perfectly describes today's geopolitical landscape. Think about an externally aided internal threat. That is literally a textbook description of state-sponsored proxy groups or funded insurgencies that we see in modern border disputes. And an internally aided external threat? That maps directly to modern espionage. Think about a rogue employee helping hackers pull off a massive corporate or government cyber attack. It's the exact same dynamic, just upgraded with modern technology. Section 4. 4 pillars of security. Building a resilient nation. So, how do we proactively secure a nation against these diverse threats? Kautilya outlined a very specific, sequenced game plan. Step 1. people welfare. Step 2, strengthen the nation both militarily and economically. Step 3 is intelligence, keeping a close vigil with spies. And step 4 is diplomacy. Notice the order there. It's totally intentional. He puts domestic welfare and the economy before military intelligence and diplomacy. Why? Because you can't have a strong army without a thriving economy funded by taxes, and you certainly can't have a thriving economy without a secure, prosperous public.
Let's put a spotlight on step 1 for a second, because this is gold. The king must act as a parent. He heavily advocated for things like Sutubanda, which meant building irrigation and bridges for farmers, and ensuring outright safety for traders. We often think of citizen welfare as just a nice moral obligation for a civil servant, but Kautilya flips that. He frames it as the ultimate foundation of national security. If the people are discontent, hungry, or economically stifled, internal threats multiply like wildfire, and external enemies will exploit that weakness. Ethics and security are totally intertwined here.
Section 5, Ancient Methods, Modern Dime, Statecraft Evolution. To really show the evolution of statecraft, we have to talk about dime. If you follow geopolitics, you've probably heard senior analysts throw this term around. Basically, DIME is an acronym representing the modern national security framework. It stands for the 4 major instruments of state power: diplomacy, information, military, and economy. When modern nations build their national security strategy, they integrate these 4 specific fields to protect their interests. Now, here is where all the puzzle pieces snap perfectly together. Kautilya's 4 ancient methods map beautifully onto the modern DIME framework. Sama, which is alliance building, maps flawlessly to diplomacy. Think of modern international coalitions like NATO. Dhamma, the use of price or gifts, maps directly to economy, like targeted foreign aid or economic sanctions. Beta, which relies on logic, values, or sowing dissension, is perfectly aligned with modern information warfare and soft power. And finally, Danda, the ultimate use of force, maps straight to the military. It goes to show that whether you're an ancient Mauryan king or a modern head of state, the actual levers of power, they haven't changed a bit. Section 6, UPSC Mains Answer Strategy, GS Paper 4, Value Add.
All right, understanding the theory is amazing, but applying it on paper is what actually gets you selected. So here is your actionable strategy for a 10 or 15 marker question on ethics in public administration. First, start your intro with a solid standard definition, like the Rajamandala Theory. Second, elevate your body paragraphs by dropping in Kautilya's quotes on welfare to prove that an ethical state is inherently a secure state. And for your way forward, or conclusion, explicitly map Kautilya's Sama, Dhamma, Beha, and Danda to the modern DMIE framework. It shows the examiner you have deep historical roots, but you're firmly grounded in today's administrative realities.
That is a serious value add for your exam strategy. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, provocative question to test your new analytical lens. If Kautilya were standing in the room today, advising a modern head of state, which elements of the DIME framework, or which of his 4 ancient methods, do you think he would prioritize to combat today's invisible, borderless cyber threats? Think critically about how this ancient wisdom solves our future dilemmas. Thanks for joining me on Ethical Point today. Keep structuring that knowledge, and I'll catch you in the next one.